It is one of the marquee games in college football that we've been talking about ever since the national championship game last season. Looking forward to Oregon visiting Columbus to take on the Buckeyes of Ohio State. Please join us for the next hour plus right here at the Voice of College Football. We've got this simulcasting on our Oregon and Ohio State channel. So Buckeyes fans, you're going to be able to study up on the Ducks for the next hour plus with Mike Black from Fifth Quarter College Football. Also join Mike on his podcast. I was able to be a guest a few weeks ago. Tremendous job that they do on their Ducks and Dogs podcast. But Mike breaks down Oregon football for us on a regular basis. And again, this is a big one, Ohio State and Oregon. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
I am good. Good to see you. Glad you could jump on board. We were just on Friday to preview the Fresno State game and more or less look ahead to Ohio State and just talk Oregon football, not knowing there might be some sweaty palms and some anxious moments against Fresno State. So your thoughts about before we move on to Ohio State, because we got plenty of time, and this was not a 45-10 game that we can dismiss. It meant something.
Yeah. So basically, I don't know if you watched the game.
I did not. I saw highlights.
So a lot of the issues with Oregon when it comes to letting them score. So I'll get into offense in a minute. That's a whole nother discussion. When it comes to letting them score, we ran something called a soft zone coverage, which is going to leave the shallow crossing routes open. And so Fresno State's quarterback just kept hitting those shallow crossing routes, and they would get us for 5 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 8 yards, 5 yards. And they were just moving down the field. And we never switched from the soft zones. We kept our corners about 8 yards off the ball, which we did that some last year, and it drives me insane. But we kept our corners farther off the ball, played soft zone. Basically, we were trying not to get beat over top. We were trying to prevent the big play every play. So we allowed them to march down the field, score some points. And I think that was a lot of the issue, as well as we were missing, for most of the game at least, we were missing 4 defensive starters. Drew Mathis got hurt early. Kayvon Thibodeau got pulled early. We were missing Jamal Hill and DJ James at the start of the game because of the issues they had. They will be playing against Ohio State. So that's down 4 defensive starters. We forced 3 turnovers. The offensive scores outside of one of them were all set up by those forced fumbles. So I don't think the defense played a bad game at all, despite what it looks like on the scoreboard. It looks like they allowed Fresno to score, and they allowed Fresno to throw for 300 yards. That was more schematic than anything. They got out schemed. But since they didn't change, I'm hopeful that it was Tim DeRuyter holding back, because we haven't seen Tim DeRuyter at Oregon yet, because it looked just like what we ran last year defensively, and obviously Tim wasn't our DC.
Jake Haener, 30 of 43, 298 in the air, 1 touchdown, no picks. And as Mike says, you can look at that a number of ways in regards to Oregon's game plan, whether they felt confident, hey, we can win this game. This is the best way to play it. We're going to hold back for Ohio State. They're not going to know what we're going to run. We can give them different looks versus securing this win. So the Ducks survived 31-24. They went up 14-0 early. Mike, you outlined the defense. The offensive side, Anthony Brown only threw 24 passes, hit on 15 for 172, so pretty conservative there. Didn't turn it over. 1 touchdown, and C.J. Verdell got the 18 carries. Travis Dye 13. So we talked a number of times during the offseason about the running back carry distribution, but that's about what we would expect there. That neither one of them tore it up. They had somewhat productive games, but as you well know, in a college offense, your running back, if you're a decent team, not even a great team, you should be averaging 5.5 yards per carry plus. And they were at 4.1, 4.9. So again, okay production on the ground, but nothing spectacular. So a fair to marginal offensive performance overall.
Yeah, a lot of that. Verdell had a really, really bad first half in that game, and he had a really good second half. So that, it was kind of weirds out the averages a little bit that he played so bad in the second half, and he played about to how Verdell has been playing in the second half. And I think one of the huge issues is, I know we have a lot of talent there, but we're running 8-guy rotations on the offensive line. That's too many. I mean, you got to get some kind of cohesion. You got to get some kind of chemistry there so that they know, okay, my left guard does this on these situations. He does this a little differently than most left guards. And they know how to work with each other. But when you're running 8 guys out there in a rotation, it's like, okay, in the fourth quarter, in the very last drive, we had in most of our backup linemen who didn't start the game. So It's really weird to see how they did the offensive line rotation. And I'm hoping they use that game, and if they really have to, this game, to figure out what that offensive line rotation is going to be, find 6, maybe 7 guys who can rotate and be solid players. But you can't be running 8 guys, 9 guys out there and rotating them. And a big woe, in my opinion, for that running game is not having Sean Dollars. Travis Dye and CJ Verdell are very similar style players. They run hard. They have a really high motor. They're going to try and run through some tackles. Neither of them can move east to west the best. I mean, they're not great at it. Dollars was that. He's the guy who can make the hard cuts. He's the guy who can make the more explosive plays. CJ made a couple of those late, but I mean, CJ's got a lot of wear and tear on those legs, especially for a college quarterback, especially with the injuries he's had. So it's not a shock that the run game struggled. It was really shocking to see how the pass game struggled, though. When it comes to Anthony Brown, he was really successful on the short and intermediate routes, like I said. He got more gun shy than anything on the deep routes. We had a play that I can remember. I think it was Jalen Redd was breaking on his route, and the DB bought for another route. So he had Jalen Redd easily. He dumps off to Riddell, who gets tackled for a loss. And a lot of it, he had open wide receivers. I mean, our wide receivers are very talented. They got separation at times. They struggled a little bit there, but they still had enough separation for him to make a few of those throws. And he just seemed to pull them back and either take off running or throw it to his check down. And I don't know if he's not confident or what was going on there. Even late in the game, we ran on a 3rd and 8 play in their red zone. So we were about to rounding up a scoring drive. It was 3rd and 8, and we run upside the middle. So I don't know what that means when it comes to the coaches trusting him throwing on those situations and in deeper 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 plays. But if we're running up the middle on those plays against Ohio State, I hate to tell you, but we're not converting that.
Gary Lewis talking my game right here. Gary, appreciate the comment here. Mash that like button, subscribe, share about the Voice of College Football YouTube platform via social media. Man, you could write for our promotional department here, Gary. Nice job on that. Now, Gary's also got a question here, which you've pretty much hit on. I'll see if you have anything else for us, Mike. Just talking about Gary saying, I heard Oregon coaching staff change the run blocking at halftime of the Fresno State game. In the second half of Fresno State game, Oregon's run blocking was better.
Yeah, so what basically happened in the second half is they didn't put in a particular skill set group of guys. They put in the big guys. So you have the Stephen Jones, the Big Salas, the larger offensive linemen. They put them in, and we saw a little more success running the ball. And I think we'll run the big guys against Ohio State too. If we want any chance at running the ball, we need to. Zach Harrison's a monster off the edge over there, and they have obviously 5 stars all over their roster. So, I mean, if our guys aren't all developed yet, we need to use what we can to our advantage, and we have some massive offensive linemen on our team.
We can certainly both chime in on this one. So Eric is asking, having seen both games, Ohio State, Minnesota, Fresno State, Oregon, how has the optimism changed for better or worse after seeing both teams play week 1?
So for me, seeing how bad Tanner Morgan played and that Minnesota was still in the game gives me a little bit of optimism, especially considering the one plays that Tanner Morgan missed on or when, his wide receivers got really open. And you guys you have one DB who's confirmed to come back. One of them is questionable, correct?
That is correct.
So for me, with Troy Franklin coming back, I feel like having him on your guys's, who would typically be your cornerback 4 or 5, because Troy Franklin's coming out as our wide receiver 3, probably as a true freshman. Having him on your corner 4 or 5, and I know you guys are deep at that position, but I'm hard pressed to believe that your corner 4 or 5, maybe even 6, depending on what happens with these injured players, is going to keep up with Troy Franklin as well. Because Troy Franklin beat out some veteran solid wide receivers for his spot too. On top of that, our offensive line is all right. I think they might be able to hold up a little bit. Thankfully, you guys don't have a Chase Young this year. You have Zach Harrison's really solid, but obviously he's not Chase Young. What worries me though is going to be your guys' wide receivers. So we do have solid corners, but DJ James hasn't played yet. He was suspended. He was expected to be cornerback 2. Mykael Wright's the only returning experienced production we have at corner. And Jamal Hill would be the only returning experience at safety, but he was also out for that first game. So we really don't know exactly how the secondary is going to perform. And Ohio State has one of the best wide receiver rooms, if not the best wide receiver room in the country. I'm a lot less scared of Stroud than I was, though. I know he performed well in the second half, but like I said last time we talked, I don't think your wide receivers are going to be that open against Oregon.
Stroud stopped making mistakes in the second half, and he settled into the offense, but he didn't have to make any difficult throws. It's that simple. So it's not a knock against him, because why make the difficult throw when you don't have to? So he hit the guys in stride that were wide open because of blown coverages, because of just mismatches more than anything, not necessarily blown coverages, although there were a couple instances there, but most of it was just a talent gap between Ohio State and Minnesota in that matchup. So Stroud was making the throws that he had to make, but those were not difficult throws. I can't think of one really impressive throw that he made in going 13 to 22 and a ton of yardage on those throws, because again, either he was throwing it short, Chris Olave and others making the guys miss and picking a big yardage, or guys wide open and him making longer throws, but not difficult throws. Wilson and Olave in particular, two throws that I can remember. And just again, across the board, he basically came out. They gave him easy throws. They gave him balls in the flat. They gave him screens on the outside. They gave him those type of throws. They threw a lot to Garrett Wilson 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage early in the game, and Stroud was good for about his first 5 or 6 throws. Then he went into an incredible funk for the rest of the first half where he looked awful. And the one opportunity that he had to roll left and throw across his body, he missed by a mile. And well, I guess he didn't miss by a mile because it was enough in Olave's frame to get a finger on it to tip it up in the air and get it picked off. But that was not a good look for Stroud. Again, he did what he needed to do in the second half. So it's going to be a big leap for him to try to carve up a defense, making difficult throws. He didn't have to throw. I don't remember them throwing an out route the entire game. So
when all else fails, run an out route.
They're going to, but you know, that long NFL throw, you know, the long out route, Stroud's not going to throw that. I haven't seen it yet. And again, I don't want to disparage him too much. I was trying to be balanced after his performance, where some just looked at the stat sheet and said, he caught his stride. He tore him up 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. And others were like, he was awful. He needs to be benched. Well, I think that he grew during that game. And let's see if he takes another step forward. We understand that was his first start and the first throws he's ever made in a college football game. The running game was pretty on point, as you might expect. Minnesota basically outplayed Ohio State for the majority of snaps in that game. Ohio State just made the enormous big plays. Their 5-star talent came through with the big 75-yard plays on offense. You mentioned Zach Harrison. He's not Chase Young at this point, but does he become Chase Young because he was another 5-star coming out? This defensive line has the potential to be amazing at some point. I don't know if they've got it in them yet, but 2 freshman 5-stars in Sawyer and Tui Matalolo, and then Zach Harrison, who has been talking all off season and his coaches about how much improvement he's going to make to make it an enormous impact. And he had the one strip sack that may have turned the game around.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, outside of the COVID year, every year for the past how many years has the best defensive end played at least one game in Columbus, with Kayvon coming to Columbus this year? But 2 things I wanted to touch on was, one, Olave. Did you see Olave talking about Oregon was his dream school, but we never offered him?
I did not.
He someone tweeted that out today. It was a quote from Olave. Oregon was his dream school. We never offered him, and so he went to Ohio State. So a lot of people are thinking he's going to take this game personal. He was from San Diego, I believe.
Yes,
he is from San Diego.
Yeah.
And
Ryan Day found him scouting somebody else.
He said he grew up an Oregon fan. He had offers from UCLA. He had offers from Nebraska, Michigan, schools like that. So he had good offers. He was recruited by a lot of major Power 5 brands, at least. But he said his dream school was Oregon. Ohio State offered him, and obviously he's at Ohio State, and he turned into a great prospect. So there was a few Ohio State fans who were messaging me on Twitter. It was like, hey, what happened here? And I was like, hey, when we had Helfrich and we had Taggart, we were transitioning to Cristobal. There's quite a few guys we missed on who grew up Oregon fans. DJ Oyungale. How am I forgetting? Tua Tagovailoa, Mackenzie Milton. All have come out and said they wanted to go to Oregon, but Oregon didn't push either until way too late or they didn't push at all. And I'm glad we, learned how to recruit because that was really tough for a couple of years. Aside from that, I wanted to ask, did Minnesota send a lot of pressure or did they get a lot of pressure passed?
Minnesota, I don't want to speak on something I can't necessarily recall or remember. I think they played a pretty vanilla standard defense. I don't remember them bringing pressure. No, certainly not anything exotic off the corner or anything delayed. They played it pretty straight up, trying to make tackles in space and trying to make Ohio State, take it down the field, in 10 plays.
Oh yeah. Let's make Ohio State take the ball down the field like they're not, built to do that. I mean, I guess it worked to an extent.
It worked to an extent, but Ohio State was still, the Wilsons and Olaves were, and Trayvon Henderson, who played his first game as a 5-star running back, and he had a big run as well on a swing pass. That coverage was blown. He was able to leak out on the left side, and Minnesota didn't pick him up. And I think when you have a talent gap, maybe being conservative isn't always the best thing because sometimes you're conservative and they even outrun the conservative play. So you're supposed to keep it in front of you, but they still get loose. So
you remember Chip Kelly defenses way back when. I mean, obviously Oregon wasn't known as a defensive team then, but they were taking risks. The Cliff Harrises and the Kiko Alonsos, and those guys were not playing it safe. They were trying to steal the ball because they're like, all right, we steal a couple possessions, we're going to score. Steal a couple possessions, we could beat this more talented team. I mean, you got to be aggressive if you want to beat those guys.
Defensively for Ohio State, again, the defensive front is just so talented. We know that they're going to be good this year. Are they going to be ridiculously, amazingly, vintage 2018 Clemson good? They've got it in them, but considering two of them are freshmen, we'll see if they get there. What's interesting about Oregon throwing so many short and not even quite intermediate passes is that Ohio State's linebackers shaky.
They're slow. That's the thing. They know where to be. They have the football IQ. They're just a little slower than you would ideally like them to be. The reactions or physically, it depends on which player you're talking about.
Yeah, it does. And in regards to, I don't want to take us down a wrong path in regards to secondary, so I want to be accurate here. I did not see Ryan Day's news conference today. The headlines that I pulled up after you made the comment about Cam Brown and Seven Banks, the two DBs that missed game one, is that he was very non-committal, Ryan Day, concerning both of them apparently.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard somebody say that one of them was announced as like playing, but maybe that was inaccurate. If
anybody knows in the live chat, let us know.
If they're both not playing, that really helps Oregon. I mean, we would have a much better chance. Although, I mean, realistically, I don't have much faith in Brown to get it deep. But I have faith in him to get it to a Troy Franklin or a Micah Pittman and then maybe beat your fourth corner and take it 20 yards. Because, I mean, as talented and as deep as you guys are, there's obviously not as big a talent gap as there was in Minnesota. And Oregon's wide receivers are obviously probably going to be better than Minnesota's on average.
Denzel Burke's a player that was pressed into action for Ohio State, and he responded well. He played well. Some of the other players did not in the secondary, but what you routinely see, and I don't know if you have the same evaluation of trying to scout players, watching, of course, all we get is the TV coverage, is at least the secondary players, you get those ISOs against the wideouts, and you can evaluate their ball skills and whether they got burned or whether they hung in there, whether they're grabby, whatever they do.
I love watching
more so than linebackers. It was difficult for me to get a read on the Ohio State linebackers because we see the line play and obviously the camera shot drifts to the quarterback, and then after on the replay we get the ISOs with the wide receivers and the DBs.
Yeah.
And Ohio State's DBs, as you can imagine, all highly recruited, fast enough, all that. So they didn't get burned, but their ball skills are not good. Lacking in ball skills. A lot. They panicked, and I'm saying they because it was multiple guys panicked, grabbed guys. They're right there. They should be confident in the ball skills, and they would make. And we're talking about a Minnesota receiving core that was missing Chris Altman-Bell, their best wide receiver, and
otherwise they're not great.
Marginal. Yeah.
And piggybacking off the linebackers topic, I think linebacker is the strong suit of the Oregon team. Justin Flo debuted with, if I'm not mistaken, 15 tackles, a forced fumble, and I believe he had a pass deflection. I don't know if it was counted, but he got his fingertips on it, and it ended up incomplete. So he had one of the best freshman breakout games I've ever seen at Oregon. Noah Sewell, his first game. Noah Sewell obviously was amazing as a freshman, but his first game was nothing like that. And I do want to say it now. I don't know if Flo plays the entire game. He might get ejected before the game's over because, man, he plays with some reckless abandon. Like, he does not care. He's trying to hit you as hard as he can hit you.
I like when these people put their financial status in my hands. So Travis is asking whether he should buy Big Ten championship tickets. Well, most likely you're safe. Yes, you should be fine. And if worse comes to worse, you're going to watch Penn State and Wisconsin play. What can I say? But beyond that, you should be okay.
You watch them play again. Yeah, I mean, Indiana was not what I expected, obviously. And Michigan, I know they won and the score looks good, but I didn't think they played great against Western Michigan either. So I don't think you guys have much of a threat.
This is in some ways a unique week to evaluate football teams because obviously week one, we're just going on what happened last year and then trying to make an adjustment on, recruiting additions and then transfer portal and NFL losses and all that. The rest of the season will have multiple games to go on. So we won't get too high or too low on any one performance. But for week two, this is overreaction week to the hilt because one game in the books. So if you're a Washington fan, they're the worst team in the world. And I get it. That's awful. That shouldn't happen. I get it.
The very next day, their most recent decommit commits to Oregon.
Really?
Speaking of overreaction, real quick, Ben Roberts. He's a 4-star defensive lineman. Speaking of overreactions, real quick, Gary Lewis said if Oregon cannot run block constantly versus Ohio State, I fear they could lose by 40-plus points. All right, I don't care what we do. If we lose by 40, I will shave my beard and mustache off. Like, we're not losing by 40 points. Even in the playoff championship game we played you guys, we played terribly. We were missing a lot of plays. We didn't have depth. We were nowhere near as talented as we are now. Obviously, we had Marcus Mariota. We still didn't lose by 40. We're not going to lose by 40.
I would be surprised. I would be mightily surprised. I was even surprised to see the line at 14. I think that's a little high.
I took it for 500.
I thought it was going to be more in the 10 or 11 range.
It was until we played Fresno. I like this question by Eric. Is Fresno away a better team than Minnesota at home?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, depends how you feel about Haener. Like, I personally think Haener's a top 20 quarterback in the country. Some people would say otherwise. I think Haener and Morgan is a lot more comparable than a lot of, Power 5 lovers are going to want to admit. Haener's a really solid player. So is their running back, Ronnie Rivers. They have a veteran offensive line. Like Mark told me, I didn't know about their offensive line until Mark said it. They have a really veteran offensive line. I think they're more experienced than the Minnesota team. I wouldn't know if they're better, but I don't know. It's pretty comparable matchups, I'd say.
Wait a minute. You think Fresno State's as good as Minnesota?
Not as good. We had to play them on the road. Y'all played them at home. So
yeah.
That's 3 points. No. I think a lot of it, the matchups in terms of personnel, I think they were on par matchups. I mean, you guys are obviously more talented than us still. You have more experience than us still.
I would say
Well,
We will again see how it plays out. But this
where
is
would
my
you have
evaluation of
Fresno
Minnesota.
ranked?
This is going into the season, then plus week 1. This
Mhm.
is what I would evaluate Minnesota to be. I think they're a top 40 team in the country.
You don't
And
think
I think
Fresno
Fresno
is?
State's more like a top 65 team in the country.
Really? I'd have Fresno in like the top 35. And I'd have Minnesota just as well in the top 35. Fresno's going to win 10, 11 games this year.
I don't see any group of 5 teams being in the top 35 other than about 4 or 5. Now, what they get ranked is different to me than what they actually are.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little higher on Fresno State. I really like their head coach. I've always liked their head coach. Their head coach is really solid. I think he probably ends up the head coach of Washington. Give it a few weeks. Not a few weeks. But if they lose to Michigan, do you think they keep Jimmy Lake? I mean, you lost to an FCS team.
Oh,
you've been
of course they do.
You've been burning down on the recruiting trail. You're missing all the best talent in the state of Washington. You're 0-2. You have what do they have going for them?
So I don't know the confidence level of Jimmy Lake coming into it, but I think he got the approval of Chris Peterson. He was a Chris Peterson hire to the extent that they trusted Chris Peterson's recommendation.
Yes, and they did no search, and they expected it to be a seamless transition. That's the words that they were using at the conferences. It's like a seamless transition, same type of coach, same styles. They still had Kwiatkowski, and they thought he was going to make decent hires. I mean, obviously we see the offensive coordinator hire. I don't know why they made that hire in the first place, but as of right now, hasn't been a great hire. And we'll see how their defensive coordinator looks next week against a talented Michigan team.
Well, I can't speak to the recruiting. So the recruiting is 75% of the job to a certain extent because you need the talent to win. But until we see the recruiting play out on the field in wins and losses, then I won't evaluate the recruiting. But Washington should be recruiting in the top 15 to 25 in the country.
36.
Now, they did go 3-1 last year, and I'm not going to overreact to one loss. He's not going to get fired.
I don't know, but they were 36th recruiting last year. They're 50th this year, and their best recruit is ranked 202nd. Their fourth best recruit is 500th. It's their recruiting hasn't been great. It's not just the recruiting; it's recruiting in state. They're missing on a large majority of the top players in Washington. Obviously, they're recruiting against Ohio State, Oregon, Oklahoma, Alabama against these guys. But I don't know. You can't. That was the issue with Helfrich. That's why we all wanted Helfrich gone. He couldn't even keep the local guys gone. USC's top linebacker last year was from Oregon. Tua Tagovailoa wanted to play at Oregon. And went into the Oregon local newspaper, the Oregon Guard, said he wanted an offer and still didn't offer him. I feel like it's very similar to what Helfrich did. That's why I think they should, but will they? Then maybe that's up for debate.
Vegas thinks Minnesota's as good as Oregon. Well, like Mike said, Vegas is reacting to the week 1 game against Fresno State. Also, the Ohio State-Oregon games in Columbus versus Ohio State playing on the road. So you can almost consider that a 6-point swing.
Mm-hmm. Because Austin's a tough stadium too.
Yeah, it's 3. You're adding 3 on the road, subtracting 3 at home. So the net difference is 6 points. So they might have been a 20-point favorite against. So think of it this way. A 14-point favorite at Minnesota is going to be a 17-point favorite. Neutral is going to be a 20-point favorite at home, if I understand that correctly. And obviously that's just a general benchmark. Vegas does not think Minnesota is as good as Oregon.
If they do, they would lose quite a bit of money. Say they played in the bowl. I don't know if that would be very close.
Yeah. Whoa.
I mean, I just don't think they looked great. I mean, you guys had an off game is what I think. I think 9 times out of 10, you beat them by 40.
Well, going forward, they're not going to have one of the best running backs in the nation.
Yeah, that as well. I mean.
But I do think Minnesota's a top 35 team. I think Oregon's more of a top 15 team, and Ohio State's more of a top 5 team. That's what I think right now.
Oregon's the top 15 and Ohio State's top 5?
Yes.
That's about what they're. I think Oregon's ranked, a 12th in the new AP poll, 11th in the coaches poll.
Do you know what Oregon is ranked in my rankings?
Well, probably like 19.
You'll have to check out my rankings. See what you think.
Okay, I just sent mine to fifth quarter today, so that should be fun. I'll have that posted soon enough.
Okay, we've suddenly made Fresno State a debate topic here in the discussion.
in the chat.
Okay, Maryland could be Fresno State.
What do you think Maryland can beat Fresno State? I think it'd be a game.
I would take Maryland over Fresno State, but yeah, good game, a 55-45 lean. That's a close one. But I take Maryland.
By the way, I was looking at the rankings and I counted it up. For a conference that's so terrible, why did they have the second most ranked teams in the Pac-12? SEC had 6, Pac-12 had 5, Big Ten had 4, ACC had 4, and Big 12 had 3, I believe.
Wait, who's getting ranked from the Pac-12 right now?
USC, Arizona State, UCLA, Oregon, and Utah.
And so then the Big Ten would be Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa. That must be it.
Yeah, you had 4. Indiana fell out. SEC has 6, with Auburn being 25th. So for a terrible conference, we got quite a few ranked teams. And I mean, Washington.
It doesn't make sense.
What? Why so many?
The rankings don't make sense. That's why I have to release a top 25 that actually makes sense every week. Because
how many do I have? 2, 3, 4.
The Pac-12, other than UCLA's performance against LSU,
the South went undefeated.
Yeah, but
besides Arizona.
But if you're beating a bunch of FCS teams, what does that matter?
Well, they played like San Diego State and teams like that, and a lot of them were receiving a high amount of votes, and other teams lost, obviously. So they jumped in over that.
Mike, look at this.
I have 5 ranked, but Arizona State is 25th and barely edged out Indiana.
I don't have my list in front of me, but I believe I've got UCLA 6 and USC 15.
Hold up.
And that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah, why rank these other teams? They haven't done anything yet.
Unranked Oregon?
They're unranked. Yeah. They have to do something first.
Mark.
See, Mike, this is what I'm trying to correct in the world of college football here.
But you're not ranking the best resumes. You're ranking the best teams.
No, I am ranking the best resumes because the resume will tell us who the best teams are eventually.
So that's different, though. Most of the polls say top 25 teams, not top 25 resumes.
Okay. How do we know? Okay. Oklahoma beat Tulane 40-35. Wow, they dropped a whole spot in the polls. Okay. I believe Oklahoma's a top 5 to 10 team in the country, but I want to see them play like one. They need to play. The performance should dictate the ranking, not what we have preconceived in our heads the entire offseason. If UAB, I'm just taking a random team that's not thought of. If UAB put on the field the same exact performance as Oklahoma in week 1, and they beat Tulane 40-35, if that was the UAB Tulane game, and UAB won 40-35, exactly the way Oklahoma did, where would UAB be ranked? They wouldn't be ranked. So why are we ranking Oklahoma based on a 40-35 win against Tulane?
Because most people aren't ranking resumes. I see that you are, but most people are ranking each person, especially the AP and the coaches, it's individual people and their opinion on who the best teams are.
So, you know what? That sounds accurate, but they are even hypocritical against that. So, for example, is Clemson What is my opinion of Clemson after losing by a touchdown to Georgia? My opinion is pretty much the same as it was prior to. I thought Georgia would win a close game. Georgia won a close game.
I thought Georgia would win a close game too, but like say for me, Clemson went from 2nd to 9th. They're watching them. Their offensive line play scared me. It was not good.
Sure, it wasn't good.
Doesn't make, in my opinion, for a good season for DJU. Even though I've come on here and said I think he's one of the best prospects coming into college football ever. It's just when your offensive line's not good and when it's as bad as it looked against Georgia, when your goal is to play those top teams, you fall from a second-ranked team to like a top 10-ish team to me.
I want to see teams evaluated based on what they've done, not based on what we think they can do.
Okay, that's a whole.
That's what I do.
Thing. So, do you have Montana ranked?
No.
They beat a ranked team, or they beat Washington. So, what do you start off?
Well, you have to make some assumptions. Everybody has to make assumptions.
But I thought it was off of resume.
So it is. It's based on resume.
So are there 25 better wins than Washington right now?
Yes. No. There are 25 better wins or losses better than Washington.
So there's
Clemson losing to Georgia by a score is a better performance. So I'm ranking
sense.
Wins are paramount with me, but also I'm evaluating the performance.
So there's 25 better game results than beating Washington in Washington.
Yeah, there are.
I would love to see the game results. That would be better than beating. Or at least, what did you have a high opinion on Washington coming into the season?
I did.
So they must be close. They must be close then.
I picked Washington to Oregon at 7-2 in the conference.
Mm-hmm. I seen that.
So I'll just say one other thing about this, then we'll move on with Oregon, Ohio State, of course. That's why we're here. But so, for example, I'm ranking wins. Again, first and foremost is ranking the wins and ranking the losses, and then determining how impressive the performance was or was not. So for me, the best win, just the result of the game, not the evaluation of the play, the best win of the week was Georgia over Clemson. Beating Clemson, that's the best win of the week. But because Alabama's performance against Miami was so overwhelmingly dominant in every phase of the game, I placed Alabama number 1, Georgia number 2. I normally would have placed Georgia 1 with the best win of the week, but it was a shaky performance offensively, to say the least, and Alabama was so overwhelmingly dominant in what we think is a top 15 to 20 team. There have to be assumptions made, or you can't do rankings without assumptions, especially early in the season.
Okay. Well, I'll send you my rankings when they drop, and I'll see what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, I think
But we're not as far off as I think you and most like polls are going to be with UCLA. I have UCLA 14th.
Okay.
So it's not as far off as a lot of people are going to be with your style of rankings. It's interesting though. What do you post them on Twitter?
No, I've got a video that posts every typically Monday morning. It's called the Top 25. That actually makes sense.
I'll have to watch that in the car on the way to work tomorrow.
I used to just read the teams off and say, hey, comment, and I'll respond to your comments. I'm just going to list the teams, but I got some complaints that people wanted me to actually say something about each team. So it used to be like 2 minutes long. Now it's more like 5.
Oh, that's
it's a pretty quick listen.
All right, I'll have to give that a check.
Yes. Yeah, it disturbs people. It upsets people. It's funny.
I know you said you didn't expect the spread. Pretend you were a betting man for a day. Would you take Oregon with the points?
What makes you think that I'm not?
I mean, I didn't want to make any assumptions.
Oh, okay.
But would you take Oregon with the points?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will be picking Oregon with the points.
I'm hoping you are correct too.
Yeah. If I was going to name a score right this second, I'll say 38-31, Ohio State.
See, I had like 34-27. About the same ballpark range. I think
Yeah.
just because of guys like Kayvon making explosive plays, it'll keep us close enough to be respectable.
Yeah, I will not be shocked by an Oregon win.
I wouldn't be insanely shocked, but I would be shocked by an Oregon win with Anthony Brown at the helm. I just
Ty is
think,
asking, go ahead.
You got it.
Well, Ty is asking this question about, which seems extremely unfair to me, but these kids are resilient and should be able to get out there and play. But at the same time, I think there's a disadvantage there, having to travel from the West Coast and play at 9:00 in the morning body clock.
To be fair, when you guys were coming to Oregon, you were going to play a late game at Oregon. So it would have been a late. Well, I guess everything goes off at Eastern time, so it wouldn't have been all that late. But did you see that there's still 10,000 tickets available because of the kickoff time, pretty much?
I did not.
There's still 10,000 tickets available, which for a game like this, you would never expect there to be tickets available 4 days before the game.
Wait a minute. It's in Columbus. It's at noon. Ohio State plays noon games all the time.
10,000 tickets available.
Ohio State has, somebody will have to let me know the last time Ohio State did not sell a game out. It's been forever.
This would be a weird one to not sell out to.
I know. They sell out for Bowling Green.
Yeah, but I wonder what the issue, because obviously people on the West Coast are a little more conservative when it comes to COVID and stuff like that. So I wonder if it's an issue with Oregon traveling. Because normally Oregon travels really well. Like, I know you remember the Tennessee-Oregon game where it looked like it was like 60-40. Oregon dang near like split the stadium with them.
Yeah.
It was, Oregon travels well, but in the light of COVID and the Delta variant and a lot of people out west being more conservative about it, maybe that could be an issue.
Yeah, I would think that's the answer, because otherwise, again, Ohio State plays some lackluster games, that's for sure. They will play Tulsa and Akron the 2 weeks following, and
I'm sure
I've always just assumed every game's a sellout because every game's been a sell. They may have 2 non-sellouts in my lifetime.
And it used to be Oregon sold out all the time, but then the student section stopped showing up. Yeah, right here. 11warriors.com. Approximately 10,000 tickets are still available for Ohio State's home opener against Oregon, which could mean fewer than 100,000 fans in the shoe on Saturday.
That's strange.
Some people are blaming the $160 for C-Deck tickets.
Okay. Because, again, there hasn't been less than 100,000 people in that stadium in 40 years.
Side note, Gary, Kayvon was announced as a starter yesterday, so I'm pretty positive he's playing. You thought Alabama would lose 3-6? Okay.
Well, D-Rock Irish likes the Buckeyes to cover.
What the hell, D-Rock? I thought we were friends.
Yeah,
I like this one.
Yep.
I thought Alabama would lose 3-6 games this season. I don't even have to read the rest of the message. I just read that part and I was like, what?
There's a score for you.
Who the... Mark, I will come in here with a green beard. Or a red, I guess, a crimson beard if we lose by 40 points. Like,
Buzz is high in Minnesota, 15th ranked team in the country at the end.
That's very high on Minnesota.
Very high.
I think if they played to their very best without that running back, 25th. Maybe.
Yeah. Without Ibrahim, their best player.
Because Tanner Morgan had some drop picks. He wasn't making the best of plays.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a problem, especially with his experience. He's been playing forever.
Sounds like a quarterback I know.
What is going to sell you on Anthony Brown?
If he beats Ohio State and throws for like, not 120 yards, a touchdown, you got to look like a quarterback who can win. Because in my opinion, Oregon's got, like I said, the roster that could compete for playoff spots. You have to look like a playoff quarterback. Is there ever been a quarterback in the playoff, minus maybe 2014 Alabama's quarterback, was that Blake Sims, to look like Anthony Brown, to play like Anthony Brown? 180 yards and 1 touchdown against Fresno State. A run defense team who's more offense-oriented, and you're throwing for 184 yards and 1 touchdown with 5 and 4-star wide receivers all over your roster. How?
Yeah, that shouldn't be. I would have to watch the pass by pass just to evaluate his play. Would like to see that.
He looked really good running the ball. He has great instincts running. He's got good ball carrier vision. But, you want a quarterback to have decent at that. But, you look more for your running back to have that. Side note on that, you know what? Compare QB situation is really like similar in comparison. Have you seen UF's situation with Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson?
Mm-hmm.
Emory Jones has the experience, been in the system. They wanted to start him. They put in Anthony Richardson and take off.
Yeah. Well, he ran the ball.
He ran a lot. He ran quite a bit.
Is he that much better of a runner than Emory Jones? Emory Jones is a runner.
Emory Jones is a runner, but Anthony Richardson has better elusiveness, I guess you would say. Like he can make guys miss a little better, and he can break off the big long runs. Emory Jones can run, but he's running for like 8 to 12 yards most of the time. Anthony Richardson, he could very well, like Marcus Mariota's rookie year, break off an 84-yard touchdown run out of nowhere.
Sam is telling me, Mark, your philosophy on the top 25 may look good week 5, but your week 1 won't convince a lot of folks is better than AP rankings. Well, if they listen to me explain it, I've won a lot of converts, Mike. I've been doing this for years, maybe 5 or 6 years, something like that. I don't know when I started it, because I used to just basically rant and rail on the AP and the coaches rankings every Monday. And then I thought, you know what? Make my own rankings. Because they just don't make sense many of the time to me. But people have to stay with it to understand, okay, a team will prove itself. And when that team proves itself, and so Sue wants me to read off my rankings. I'm not going to do that, but I'll throw out a few just to tease some people to go over and watch my video. I want people to watch the video. It's only 5 minutes long. Michigan State's number 10 in the country.
I liked how they played. I was very tempted to put them 25th over Arizona State.
Iowa's number 3.
I have them 10th.
I'll throw out one more. How about Rutgers is 25?
Man, Rutgers, though, what is going on there? Why do they look like a decent program all of a sudden?
I guess a coach can do that much.
Them and Oregon State, I'm used to them being poverty, and now they're both kind of competitive in their games, beating the bad teams they should beat, recruiting a lot better. It's like, what's going on? This is weird.
Yeah. Ohio State fans are not happy with me.
Why is that?
They're number 9.
Oregon fans wouldn't be happy with you either, being unranked.
Oklahoma's unranked too.
All 5 UCLA fans would love you. UCLA looks kind of dangerous, though, man.
Yeah, they do.
They look kind of dangerous.
Zach Charbonnet for the Heisman.
You see, they started running a lot of that spread West Coast style again instead of trying to do whatever they've been doing for the past few years.
Yeah.
It seems Chip Kelly got out of his own way a little bit. Did you look at that? They revert to running the scheme he's coached his entire life, and they win a big game. It's almost crazy to think.
I know you were high on them.
I was hoping they ran the offense they did. What preseason wise, I had them 20th. I don't think anybody had them ranked. I had them 20th. I had Ole Miss 22nd. Outside of Washington being 11th, none of my rankings were too bad when it comes to the results of the game.
Okay.
Washington 11th is just
Sure. Well, the thing is though, I ran down a ton of teams over the last 5 or 10 years that have lost embarrassing early season games and still
most
turned
of them
out to be
perform
good.
well. Most of the ranked teams that have lost to FCS opponents have ended either competing for their conference championship or winning it and playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, which is it's interesting to see. I've seen a couple of Washington 247 guys, I believe, posting about it, and it's like, yeah, Iowa was probably the worst one of the ranked teams who lost. They ended up 7-5, but they all ended up with winning records.
One of those Washington State years under Mike Leach, maybe his best team that went 11-2. One of those teams lost to an FCS game.
Yes, Eastern Washington. And do you know the quarterback they lost to?
That would have been. Oh shoot, he went to Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I can't think of his name. Wait, oh my word.
Really good for the 1 year was at Oregon too. When he was healthy.
Oh my goodness, I can't think of his name. I just can't think of his name.
We played Eastern Washington week 1 and they hit him and hurt him too.
Yeah, he's on the tip of my tongue.
Vernon Adams Jr.
Yeah. Okay.
That was he almost
exactly
beat
who I was thinking
Washington.
of. But
He almost beat Washington at Eastern Washington.
getting bad with names, I guess. All right. I don't know that we've got anything else to cover. What do we have here? Anything else? We're going to Ohio State. Nobody's given us any questions or comments here.
How do you feel personally? I know we both are probably going to have opposite opinions. How do you feel the Olave and Wright matchup goes? I'm pronouncing the name right this time.
Nice job by you. I don't want to offend any Chris Olave fans out there. I want them to understand what I'm saying. He is a great receiver. He's receiving all these accolades. The numbers prove it. When you watch him play, and you're used to watching other elite receivers across the country play, if I didn't know that was Chris Olave and I didn't know the numbers, he doesn't, the way he
doesn't pop.
He doesn't pop to me as like Garrett Wilson. He looks like an NFL receiver. The way he runs, his body build, the way he high points the football. You know, he made a catch against Clemson in the playoffs 2 years ago that really kind of announced his arrival. It was a ridiculous catch over a Clemson corner. Like, Olave doesn't look the part to me. He's more like a baller. He's just a gamer. He arrived on the Ohio State scene blocking a punt against Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody knew who he was, and he blocks this punt against Michigan. And
everyone loves him.
Yeah, and then he caught a touchdown pass in that game too, and he like all his production was right at the last end of the 2018 season. But yeah,
so
it's an extremely productive player.
So do you think that they put Mike Hill on him, and if so, how do you think that matchup goes?
Well, I can't say that I'm an expert on watching Mike Hill play, especially since there was only 7 games last year.
Yeah, and he was a freshman in 2019.
So I saw quite a bit of Oregon in the Rose Bowl season. Last year, I saw the Pac-12 championship game and the Fiesta Bowl, but probably nothing else.
The only thing that I could say that would stand out, just like, you know, because obviously numbers for a corner is going to be kind of hard to be like, oh yeah, he's good, because tackles can be either a really good thing or a really bad thing for a cornerback. But I could say the one thing that I think was impressive, he's 5'11", and we put him on Stanford's 6'7" wide receiver with no issue. They threw a fade route into the end zone against him, and Michael jumped up and swatted it. His vertical is nuts.
Should be fun to watch. I'd put him on Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, my fear is that Mike Hill will be on whichever wide receiver, and you guys are gonna be like, all right, so Garrett, you're not gonna have as big a role this week. We're just gonna throw to where all these freshmen and first-time starter corners are sitting at. Mike Hill, NFL corner. Garrett, you'll get a few plays, especially if you get open, if you beat them, which a wide receiver is going to beat a corner. If they're matching up for an entire game, they're going to beat him at least once in the game. And, they're going to get him there. But I think otherwise they might stay away from where Mike Hill is and take advantage of the inexperienced cornerback play.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a smart thing to do.
That's what usually happens.
Yeah, it's not.
Pick on the inexperienced guys. Pick on the guy that has to leave the game. Which, as a side note to college football and what's been going on this past weekend, even though it was an amazing weekend, something needs to be done about targeting.
That game, what was it, yesterday?
Well, there was an Ole Miss game, against Louisville, but there was another game I saw on Saturday. Don't remember which one. There were players dropping like flies. And here are my two issues with targeting. I want to protect the players as well, and I don't want players out dropping the crown of their helmets because it's been determined and proven that this is not good in the short term or the long term for their health. So I agree. But sometimes in watching the replay, the officials aren't taking into context
the offensive player,
the situation or the speed of the situation. Yeah, sometimes an offensive player will make a move at the very last split second, or they'll be being hit by another player that changes the trajectory of their body. It makes it impossible to avoid that kind of contact.
On top of that, 15 yards is a tough penalty. And they're not trying to hit people like that if they're your 15-yard penalty for it. So, ejection the very first time, no matter of intent, makes no sense. 15 yards is a lot, especially when you're playing against another good team. That's a first down and a half. You don't want to give that up. That's a bad punishment it is. And they should have a flagrant system, I guess. Or there's flagrant, and then there's, for basketball certs, there's flagrant, and then there's personal fouls. And in football, there's personal fouls as well. You could make it a more serious personal foul, but if they don't look like there's any malice in it, why are we kicking players out of games who are just trying to make a football play, and they're two elite athletes who are running maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, hitting, and they're moving at the last second? I don't understand how people who like to hit hard, like, for instance, Justin Flo is supposed to play. Okay, you got to wrap up and bring him down. Well, okay, so we don't want any trucks or big hits with the shoulders. And if somebody else moves, okay, that's the linebacker's fault. But what if the wide receiver moves his head? And what if wide receivers start intentionally trying to get those calls? Because, all right, that's their best player out of the game, or their best linebackers out of the game. So it's really messy how they're doing it right now.
It's also the only penalty where the severity of the penalty depends on at what point in the game you commit the penalty. So if it's the last play of the game, then
you're out for a half.
The game's over, so you're out the next half of the next game. Mm-hmm. Versus if you commit that penalty 3 plays into the second half of that game, you're missing the remainder of the game, and the next half of the next year, you're missing twice as much playing time. There should be a set. If they're going to eliminate, which I don't agree with, but if they're going to take a player off the field, take them out for the same exact amount of time, 3 series, whatever it is.
Or the whole next, if you're going to make it extreme like this, make it the next week's game, or where it's a set amount, and there's not, okay, this guy got a quarter, this guy got 2 quarters, this guy got a drive, this guy got QB kneel.
Yeah. Yep.
It's tough.
I love this comment coming in from Professor Chaos. Mark's arrogance in his top 25 is what pisses people off, and he always devalues any schedule Ohio State has because it's an ignorant fool. Who's it? It's an ignorant fool. Okay, we'll have to track them down. But okay, I always love the words always, Never.
Be really weird. I mean, I don't understand that at all. Like, the Big Ten is solid, but when you compare resumes, obviously teams play certain out of conference games. If you're just looking at straight resumes, it's hard to, argue what an educated college football fan is going to say. I can't doubt yours is ever insanely off on Ohio State outside of the first few weeks. But if you look at any analytical rankings, they're always wonky the first few weeks until they get more data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I need. I need more data. All the data I have is one game.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anything about the weather. I always enjoy these questions, Mike, when people ask us questions that can be Google searched. So
What's the weather for?
look up the weather.
Hey, Alexa. So what do you think outside of the obvious, the Olave and Michael and the Kayvon versus whatever offensive tackle he goes against? What do you think is going to be an underrated player matchup going into this game?
Well, I don't necessarily know if it's a matchup because the run game versus Oregon obviously involves everybody, mostly the front seven, but of course support from the safeties and the corners. But Ohio State, they're in an interesting spot where Master Teague was their number one running back coming into this season. He's kind of a serviceable player, good player, but
not what I expected.
He's not in line of J.K. Dobbins, Zeke Elliott, Carlos Hyde as the next great Ohio State back. And I certainly was expecting him to be phased out at some point in favor of these freshmen. Mayan Williams had a big game against Minnesota, 9 carries for $125. He's kind of a bowling ball is his nickname, but he does have decent speed as well. And then they brought in the 5-star Travion Henderson, and he made a big play in the passing game. So just to see the running back distribution and how conservative Ohio State's going to be versus, I got to think that Ryan Day is reviewing CJ Stroud's performance against Minnesota, and Ryan Day is always going to, he's not going to go into a shell. He's not that kind of coach. He's an innovator. He's a passing coach, but they know that they can lean on that offensive line. They know that they've got backs who can do damage, and just the run pass ratio and their level of conservativeness versus taking shots is going to intrigue me, because I think they're cognizant of their, I won't say issues or weaknesses, but where they need to develop, mainly their quarterback making difficult decisions and difficult throws. And again, the rest of the offense is set. It's an extremely good offense, and they should be able to move Oregon out of the way, but Oregon's stout defensively. So
the biggest question going into it was interior defensive line, but they performed really well against a typically run-heavy Fresno State team with a really solid running back and a decent O-line. So, I mean, I thought that was going to be our weak spot, but I'm not sure now. But obviously, it's only been one game. So, they could have had a good game. Somebody could have had a bad game. You never know. It's week 2. It's still early football. We still don't know exactly who Ohio State and Oregon are yet.
It's just me, Tim79. You're right on, Tim. I've been notoriously bad at forecasting the weather, so I try to stay away from that. Thank you. You got my back.
I don't know about the wisest part with Oregon unranked, but I guess we can live with it.
Hey, if they win in Columbus, even if they play well in Columbus, that will probably gotta see how everybody else does, of course, but that will probably get them ranked.
Targeting calls, targeting calls are really tough.
It's just me, Tim79. Mark, do you die a little time inside whenever ESPN people give incorrect information? I saw some bad misinformation this past weekend, and I'm trying to think of the first one, and I couldn't help but tweet about it, but I spare the individuals. I don't say so-and-so said this.
Did you die inside when you saw the Bishop Sycamore situation?
What's that?
Did you die inside when you saw the Bishop Sycamore situation?
Yeah, I could care less about that. I find it funny.
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was cool too. And a couple of those players were like 3-star players who reclassified.
Okay.
But there
I
was
just don't know how
apparently
you
one.
pull that off the second time. So they played on ESPN last year.
They play Duncanville next week. Yeah, they play Duncanville on the 13th.
Huh.
It's really weird. But you know why they're going to do it? People are going to watch it now.
That's very true.
People are going to watch it now. Even though they're going to get absolutely curb stomped, people are going to watch it. You know what? The only thing I love ESPN. I have ESPN Plus, but the only thing I despise is their recruiting rankings. They are so bad.
Yeah.
But I don't think they put a lot of effort into it, really. Like, they have a couple guys. I don't think their department is really huge when it comes to recruiting rankings.
Yeah, sometimes you get away from what you do well and try to do everything. It's like McDonald's making rib sandwiches and salads, and
that's crazy. Everyone loves them rib sandwiches.
That's what I've heard. Never had one.
They're not that good.
Yeah, they can't be.
Ryan Day is overlooking Oregon for Tulsa. I hope so. So I do have a question for you, Mark. I asked you this on the Ducks and Dogs podcast, but in case I didn't, I just want to know. What would you say percentage-wise, 0 to 100%, of the odds Oregon wins a title in the next 10 years if Mario stays? So obviously there's a chance that, Saban or somebody out in the East retires and he goes. But if he stays, what do you think are the chances next 10 years?
It's still, when you think about the difficulty in winning a national championship, it's still a long shot for almost everybody, except for them.
Yeah, anyone but Bama. It's a 50-50 any given year for them.
50-50. 6 out of 12. But Oklahoma could still be Oklahoma 10 years from now and
this is
not have
completely off a guess then.
What's that?
So it's more of off a guess. Do you think personally we win one in the next 10 years?
No.
No.
So I'll put the percentage at what would make sense? I'd say there's a 15 to 20% chance that Oregon wins a championship in the next 10.
See, my thought is we win one in the next 5. Because I'm hoping Saban retires and they don't take Mario.
I just see a big difference between making the playoff and then winning the championship.
Yeah.
To get to the playoff is one thing. It's a great accomplishment. You have to be very good. But then to beat 2 elites in the playoff.
But would you say over the past, since they've started playing championship games, what was that, 1998?
Yeah.
Maybe not the best. Oregon has been one of the better teams at getting elite quarterback play when it comes to the college level.
Sure.
And we see what those teams have done with lesser Oregon teams. So say we get, now obviously this is not realistic at all, say we get another Dennis Dixon or Marcus Mariota on this talent level team. You don't think they could break through and win those 2 playoff games?
So you're telling me that if Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell transferred to Oregon 6 months ago, how much better would the Ducks be right now?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it right now, especially over the next years as these 5 stars are developing and these 4 stars are developing. I think quarterback's going to be the difference in whether we win one or lose or not win one. Ty Thompson. Gotta hope like hell. If he's not it, man.
I would like to see somebody run, speaking of recruiting rankings, there's a lot of things I would like to see done with recruiting rankings. Here's one of them. Take all the 5-star quarterbacks from the last 20 years and then come up with a measurement of what's a boom, what's a bust, what's everything in between. And so what should our expectation be of any 5-star quarterback? What are the odds that they're going to become Andrew Luck, or they're going to be nobody, or they're going to be something in between?
I was about to say not all 5 stars are created equal, though, because you have the the Andrew Lucks, the Caleb Williams, and then you have the fringe 5 stars like Ty Thompson.
Understood, but there's still only how many 5-star quarterbacks each year?
Oh, probably
5 or
maybe
6?
what, 5? Yeah.
Yeah. And you could even rate that, maybe not even base it on 5 stars, base it on the rating.
Yeah. On the number rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those 1000s have not panned out very well. I was looking at the all-time recruiting rankings, and a lot of those 1000 guys have not been great.
There's a lot of things that I think we read and we value and we take for granted. And I want to see somebody come up with, I would do it myself if I had the time. And if somebody would pay me to do it, sure, I would do it. But, this has to generate money. So I can't, be spending 6 months on a project that doesn't pay off. So, for example, we got into a conversation the other night about the football power index. Okay, and somebody said one of my predictions was off because the football power index said, and I was like, are you kidding me? Are you really bringing up the football power index as being seriously?
It's like bringing up PFF nowadays.
I can't claim this in any such way because I've not done the research, but I don't think anybody else has. What would be valuable is if you could go to ESPN and look up their FPI, and then if they would track, if they would honestly and accurately track their own FPI, and then the results, and show us how accurate this is.
I do know one stat that's accurate when it comes to recruiting rankings. Only 2 teams have ever played for a national championship under 50% blue chip ratio.
Oh, so this is since '98, since the BCS?
Since they've been playing championships, yeah. Only 2 teams.
There's been one matchup. Oh, 2 teams, not in the same year.
Not in the same year, no. Only 2 teams ever to make the championship.
That did not rank in the top, what?
That did not have higher
50%
than 50%
blue chip ratio. Gotcha. I'm going to say 2010 Auburn. No?
Incorrect.
Okay. I will take a shot at 2010 Oregon.
That's one.
And then the other one would be, let's see, since the run through the years, who was necessarily not supposed to be there. All the ones recently are heavyweights.
I'll tell you, it is recent.
Oh, it is?
Fairly recent.
Then it's probably 20. Am I missing? I would say it's 2015 Clemson.
2014 Oregon.
Oh, the other Oregon. I should have.
Both teams are Chip Kelly teams.
Okay. Yeah.
So obviously an anomaly of a coaching situation, a complete what is it, like, I guess industrial boom in a sense of a restylization of college football. Him being innovative, like, it's so obviously I'm saying that's an anomaly. So if you're not over 50%, the odds are you're not gonna play for a title.
Sure.
Unless, I guess, UCLA has the anomaly though.
Yeah, I started to pay it. The reason I made the comment about the FPI was last year, instead of just making predictions, I put my percentage probability next to each game. So I would put up Oregon's schedule, for example, and I made an estimation on what I thought their probability of winning each game. And then, so that then made me contrast it with the FPI because I got a lot of comments, and then I started putting the FPI next to it. And I started to determine as the results started to come in that this FPI is not necessarily anything special. I wish somebody would actually track it.
Bet you got Oregon wrong too, because I think everybody did. With a lot of those confidence levels in games, man, we beat the good teams we played and lost to the bad teams we played outside of Iowa State.
What is it right now for Ohio State and
for
Oregon?
The Ohio State-Oregon game, it's like 85-15.
Yeah, it's a little high, but that's... They waited too much for home field advantage, I think, as well.
Very much so.
They waited too much for home field advantage, and they also, during the game, the numbers are skewed. Here's the worst example I can come up with, but I've seen this a ton of times. The Jacksonville, New England 2017 AFC Championship game. Jacksonville's leading by 10 with like 9 minutes left in the game.
It was like 88%, wasn't it?
Oh, it was like astronomical. It was like 99.2. I'm like, what? If anything, at this point, I'm suddenly considering this a 50-50 game at this point because Jacksonville's got a 10-point lead with 9 minutes left. I'm thinking it's 50-50 at this point, not because they were just going crazy showing the highlights that night saying, oh, this was this astronomical comeback because they only had a 0.8% chance of winning. And I'm like, who in the world came up with that calculation?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the TCU Oregon game.
Well,
that probably
I can understand. What was it, 31-0? Sure.
38-0. But I mean, literally when Vernon Adams went down, I told my brother we were losing the game. He's like, you're up by 38. And I'm like, yeah, we're losing the game. I had seen that team play without Vernon Adams.
That's crazy.
We were losing the game. For Buzz LOL, he said 2014 Oregon may have been the best team, but had half of the team in jail or disabled by Natty game. First of all, that half of the team in jail hits a little too close to home there. And I think all 4 of our top 4 wide receivers were out. And Mariota still, I mean, I used to like PFF, but I don't know how much weight you put in PFF anymore. Mariota still has the highest rated championship game performance in the playoff era.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Higher than Joe Burrow, higher than anybody else. We were missing, if I can remember correctly, we were missing 4 wide receivers, 3 offensive linemen, and a running back on offense. No excuse for Buckner and Armstead to get tore up like they did, though.
It's astonishing to watch these games over the weekend and hear about how many of these players, obviously first-rate quarterbacks, have left California to go to the SEC and the East Coast. Wow.
Yeah, DJU really stings. And Mackenzie Milton was not from out west. I guess he moved it quite a bit. Bryce Young is somebody I would have never expected to not go to USC. But obviously Helton's there. They've had issues with Helton. DJU, for a while there, if there was a Polynesian quarterback who was really good after Mariota, I was like, all right, we're probably going to land him if we want him. And what happened was, I think with DJU, it was we were transitioning from Taggart to Cristobal, and Cristobal, his record as a head coach wasn't great, and nobody was sure what to make of Cristobal. That was the player's choice at coach. So he went with the safer bet over there in Clemson. Obviously, Clemson's a great team and has a better chance to win a championship right away as he's there. But I think if Cristobal's already set there and Cristobal's done what he's done now, I think we would have landed DJ. It's just we got caught at a really bad time with Bryce Young and DJ being in the same year.
Dependent Fanatic. Hey, Mark, I did not get the notifications, but I still found you. The notifications, I think everybody gets the first notification for that particular channel, meaning the first upload or live stream that's announced. That's how I understand it. Otherwise, I can't get a handle on these notifications, and it doesn't seem like anybody else can in terms of some people get them and others don't. That's about the only thing I've been able to figure out is that people typically get the first notification of the day.
Hey, Mark, what do you think USC has to do for Helton to keep his job? Somebody in the chat said if USC doesn't make the playoffs, so they fire Helton. No, I don't think they need to make the playoffs. But what do you think?
I think, much like Harbaugh, I think 8-4 is going to be an interesting decision. It's going to be, who knows, there might be a lot of infighting among the ranks to determine, okay, do we keep him or not? But I think 9-3, and it may not necessarily just be a number,
I think it's
But,
winning the South.
Playing competitively against Notre Dame and the other top teams, especially considering, and I know they just lost to Montana, but that USC gets no Oregon or Washington on the schedule. So they do have a light schedule in the Pac-12 compared to what it could be this year. Shouldn't they win the Pac-12 South?
That I think is the barometer to whether he gets fired or not. If they don't win the Pac-12 South, I think he's gone. But I also don't think they blow up the program. I think they attempt to do what Washington attempted to do. I think they promote Dante Williams, and they try and keep everything else intact. Although I'm not sure how great of a coordinator Todd Orlando is. But I think they would try and keep the rest of the coaching staff intact with Dante Williams at the helm. More so to change face than anything. USC's improved over the last few years with Helton, coincidentally, after adding Dante Williams. But as long as they win the South, they won't fire him. But will they win the South? It's really tough this year. Utah's really good. UCLA's really good. Arizona State's really good. And then you got USC. Colorado's a sleeper too.
Yeah, Colorado's got a date with Texas A&M. Don't expect them to win that, but how do they look in that game?
Yeah, I think the spread is pretty big too. I don't know.
I would guess 22.
Yeah, I feel like if it's over 20, I might take it. Colorado's a solid team. Not that it's going to be like, okay, A&M doesn't control the game the entire way. I think A&M could put some backups in late, and Colorado shaves a few points off of it at the end.
Yeah, and not at Colorado. It's in the NFL stadium.
It's in Mile High.
Yeah, or whatever they call it these days.
That's one of those neutral site games the SEC likes to do normally, like Oregon at Atlanta. Neutral. All right, Mike. Worry, guys.
I think we'll wrap it up at this point, unless you got anything else for us.
Not that I could think of. We've been talking about Oregon, Ohio State all off season, and we've been ready for this game. We've been waiting for this game for how many years now?
Long time. I don't know when they signed this contract, and they still have to figure out what they're going to do about Ohio State making the return trip to Autzen.
They did. So you guys are paying us $8-something million for this game. And then you scheduled a new home and home.
Oh, okay.
In either 2028 or 2031. Or actually, I think it is 2028 and 2031.
All right. I did not know that.
That was done early in the offseason, I think.
We appreciate everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for stopping by. Ohio State and Oregon, of course, coming up noon Pacific time, 9 Pacific time. So get up early if you're used to being out on Friday night. Sorry, but you're going to have to wake up and shake the cobwebs and be ready for kickoff. You catch Mike over on Ducks and Dogs podcast and also catch him on his Twitter as well. Where can we find your Twitter, Mike?
Yeah, so I run my page at ScoMikeB, SCOMIKEB, and I also run FQ Ducks. That's fifth quarter college football. We have a lot of writers there. I tend to just have fun on Twitter, make my own rankings, do stuff like that. I don't write full-fledged articles. I do a lot of video content, though, if you want to check it out.
Cool. Mike, we always appreciate it. Should be a good game.
Should be. Sadly, I will be watching Florida and USF for my brother's birthday.
Oh, okay.
We'll be in the stadium, and they start at the same time. Okay. Very upset about that. But
set your DVR.
Exactly.